Hey guys, Jay Skellet here. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about neck blanks and necks in general. This is part of kind of a series that I've been talking about doing for a little bit. You guys were asking for non-fast motion videos on the process of how I make a guitar neck. So a little bit of steps involved with these are basically you would take your stock, rough it into approximately a 3x3, whatever works best for you. I like to cut my truss rod channels on the table saw while this is still kind of a square blank. From there, I come through and I like to cut my break angle for my headstock. And then this piece here, if you notice there, I've got it split as well. These pieces here, since they'll be offcuts, will come around and get flipped, and they'll become the little bit of extra bits needed to make the full width of the headstock. Now, all the tuning machines will land on this one piece, so you still have a solid single piece coming from your heel all the way up. Now, the reason I do a 3x3 blank is to get two necks out of each thing. So what I like to do ahead of time, and this will save you a lot of time, is go through and take some MDF and take the time to lay out exactly what your neck's going to be. So you see here, this is where the neck pickup will sit. I've got tick marks where my truss rod channel should end. I've got an angle for the break angle to set the neck, kind of cut into there. I've got the thickness of my headstocks and a rough end thickness of the thickness of the neck kind of built into it. So what this allows me to do is kind of lay it out with, so for instance, if you notice these big bored holes here and here, I take those out with a hole saw, or sorry, not a hole saw, a Forstner bit on the drill press. And since I use a big 3/4 carbide tipped blade on the bandsaw to cut these, it doesn't turn corners real well. So this gives the spot for the bandsaw to kind of terminate, and then I can kind of readjust where I'm going to exit out without putting the bandsaw blade on a bind. So that's kind of the initial steps there for that. Yeah, we're looking for good yield out of this. So, you know, by the time you cut the two necks, I think I showed in some previous videos. Actually, here, I'll grab them. So in the fast-paced video I showed a couple days ago, you saw me cut these two necks. You know, they were, situated like this within the piece. These pieces here came from the bottom. They came from here. So those two pieces there get flipped around. If you notice too, I've got it marked, this here's 17 on it and a 17 on this. When I rough in these, because I'm setting up my planer multiple times, things like that, I'll tend to go ahead and do 20 or 30 3x3 blanks like this, and then set them aside. And then when I get to each step, I'll get them at least to this far. So from this point on, this can kind of sit on the shelf and be stable for the time being until I have to actually make a neck out of it. But the rest of these steps are pretty important, that once I'm set up, I can just repeat the process. So, you take a half hour to set up your tool, and then you spend another, it takes 10 seconds then to zip the saw blade through it. So it's important to try to bulk build as many things as you can, for me anyway, to kind of keep my lead times a little, not crazy, where it's, you're waiting 3 years on a guitar or something ridiculous like that. So anyway, nice tip about the pulling these pieces here is when your end grain and stuff comes into play, you can actually kind of match it up. So, and because they came from the same spot relative, so these two ears came from right here on the actual blank. So when you pull these up and flip them around, it gives you a pretty consistent color and grain shape. so it's not as obvious that you have the ears added there. Now that said, when I talk about ears and things, so for instance, you know, this is grossly oversized. So this is a headstock template. So as you can see, it's just the tips, you know, these little corner pieces here that we're utilizing this for to give us the full shape. So again, these are oversized, but it's just, you know, you glue it on, you're going to cut it off later anyway. Now we've got these glued on, but the truss rod channel's been cut. In some of the other videos, I showed some of my cradles and things like that I use. I'm not going to get totally into that right now, but you can see here, you know, I've got this good bit of meat kind of left here, and you know, here at the heel, it's still pretty rough. But what I like to use the cradle jig to kind of give me my initial kind of layout here is it keeps everything consistent. So, like, you can't, I mean, you're not going to play this neck the way it is. It's not very comfortable at all, but it gives me some guidelines. So now I've established an exact thickness and a pretty good radius. So from here, if I start going through and hand carving things from this stage, blending in these heels, blending in the volutes, and then blending the neck, the odds of all of my necks being pretty consistent with one another are pretty good because I use the same process to remove the bulk of the meat of the material. So it gives me a good starting point to keep things consistent, so you don't pick up one neck and it's a baseball bat and the next neck's a toothpick. Now, obviously within this I can adjust the parameters. If somebody asks, Frank, I'm looking at you if you watch this, somebody asks for a giant baseball bat neck, I can adjust the depths and the heights and build to suit that. Same goes for a thin neck. I tend to shoot for my finished thickness to be about 0.8 up at the 0.8 to 0.8.5 up here to 0.90 around the 12th fret. So you've got a little bit of a slope here. And then from there, I can kind of either make it a little thicker or a little thinner, but that's kind of like the standard that I shoot for. And that's accommodating for a 1/4 inch thickness on the fretboard as well. So I guess, so if you notice too, my truss rod channel is plug cut all the way through, which is kind of a no-no in some senses. But I save all of my scraps, and for instance, this is a little piece of walnut strip, and so you use these here, and then they fit pretty nicely in there, and then you can use that as just kind of like a plug basically, and then you'll flush this up, and that'll kind of give you your stop for your truss rod there. I like to use two-way adjustable. It's good, especially if you're like a touring musician and you're going from, you know, Florida to Canada, you know, and humidity and fluctuations are going to cause your neck to want to do one of these numbers on you. No matter which way it goes, you can always adjust it. Traditionalists might say that's the wrong way to do it. I don't give a shit. That's what I do. Oh, sorry, YouTube. Anyway, yeah, so that's kind of how I get to a halfway point on the necks. I'll do some more videos showing more, but I don't know. You guys asked for regular time videos, so there you go. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.